Hello, and welcome to the Enterprise Automation Excellence Podcast, hosted by Enterprise Management Associates. As a leading IT analyst firm, we provide deep insights across IT and data management technologies. In this podcast, we explore how automation drives business processes, analytics, development, and infrastructure. Join hosts Dan Twing and Tom O'Rourke as they discuss the evolving automation landscape, share strategies to optimize your tools, and guide strategic decisions for your automation portfolio. Now, let's dive into the world of automation excellence.
Hello, and welcome to the Enterprise Automation Excellence Podcast. I'm Dan Twing, and I'm here today with my co-host, Tom O'Rourke. And today we are going to talk about how will AI impact enterprise automation and orchestration. So we're going to do a little bit of a format change here. I'm probably a bit more positive than Tom, and Tom is maybe a bit more skeptical. So we're going to play this as a little bit of a point-counterpoint kind of conversation. Tom, why don't you lead in with your perspective on the state of AI in enterprise automation?
I will accept skeptical. I would probably shift that towards pragmatic. We're both in agreement that AI is a big deal. It has great potential, and it has the potential at the level of when the web was introduced 25 years ago, when mobile really took off 15 years ago. This is a technology that can go and have a lot of impact. It's having impact today in the consumer marketplace, but our focus in this podcast is going to be on AI and how it's going to impact enterprise automation. How will it impact the tools? How will it impact the teams? And where do we stand in that? Are we a quarter away? Are we 3 years away? Is it going to be 10 years until this all comes to fruition?
When we say AI in enterprise automation, we need to back up maybe a half a step and say some of it's already there, right? Neural networks have been out there and deployed in a while. That's a foundational part of AI. The ability of machine learning, which is built on that, on top of that, is already well in use and deployed. So when you and I mean how will it impact it from here, we're really talking about the introduction of LLMs, the introduction of agentic capabilities, and the continuing strive for AGI at some point. We already have some AI working in enterprise IT, but it's this new stuff that we're really maybe more focused on. Tom, you certainly can disagree with that.
I think that because of the general market enthusiasm, the hype around these tools, the general press and the technology press, this has driven a few things. It has raised awareness in the executive suite on AI having the potential for businesses to use it to be able to go and run better. It has certainly had an impact for enterprise software companies. And I think probably first point of skepticism on this is that, as we look at the recent and upcoming releases of automation tools, they all have AI labels on them. But how much of that is technology and how much of that is marketing remains to be seen. We're certainly in a place right now where the product changes are being driven by the software providers. They're not being driven by requests from the automation users.
I had used the phrase with you when we were planning this out. The product management on those tools right now is somewhat more of a me too product management than a customer demand product management. But I think we can anticipate that the demand will come as the things mature. Certainly there are real problems in and around automation that a little bit more reasoning capability and creativity can improve. Well, I'm really referring to LLMs here now, that certainly we see in the enterprise products. The early additions were a simple chatbot, improving the frequently asked questions, so you could do it in natural language and get real answers back. And then, and several products have that, and some will have it, later this year. But that's fairly understood, and it seems to work and help people. The next level would be actually acting on the product, right? That you can, instead of using the UI and a mouse, you can direct it by voice. And that too is something that is achievable currently because of the ability to improve natural language processing with the LLMs. Beyond that, LLMs is not the end product here. I mean, it is a creative probabilistic capability, but without other things around it, it isn't delivering all the value. It adds a new capability that needs to be combined with other things to really solve a business problem.
Right. And adding a chat-based interface or even a voice interface is a wrapper on the existing tool. It will certainly be beneficial to users, but it's going to probably fall into the category of a small incremental gain, probably not going to produce the type of productivity gains that have been promised by some of the AI labs.
The productivity gains are more difficult to predict because in many cases, not every new feature in a release gets heavy use the minute it's generally available. So even stuff rolled out last year, even if they've upgraded to versions, the latest point releases that have these capabilities, is no guarantee that every enterprise that's upgraded and has them is actually taking advantage of them. So that learning curve feedback loop to improve them, there's not a lot of data there yet. So certainly we're still in the making claims that are, maybe not all fully proven yet. It's more goal-based than look what we achieved. I reacted to one agentic AI announcement from a service ticketing type of software a week or so ago, and their claim was that for L1, support, they would see, I had one client who had 300 L1 support people. Their goal was to have 6 after the deployment of these capabilities, but they're still in the starry-eyed goal-setting phase. They have not used it long enough to have seen just how many of those 300 they can eliminate as L1. And that doesn't necessarily mean everyone loses their job. These higher skilled ones go to L2 and whatnot, but they absolutely have a productivity and a lower number of staff goal, but they do not have the track record to show how they're doing against that just yet.
I think success there is in part associated with how mature the organization is in terms of processes, how much information is available in order to train the LLM to take over the level 1 jobs. It's much easier to do that if you're working from a curated set of data that maps problems to solutions rather than, a set of thousands and thousands of tickets that describe the same problem in dozens of different ways, and where the processes were weak, so the tickets were closed without having a definitive answer on what was done in order to address the original issue.
Well, if we bring this back to our conversation from last week, we talked in our last podcast episode about how the EMA radar for workload automation and orchestration is changing. And there were while there's lots of little things still happening and maturing, that I really focused on three big changes: the rise of observability, the rise of AI, and the rising need for broader orchestration and more powerful orchestration. So AI is a key part of that triad, because having more observed data gives you more information to act on. But without the reasoning capability, you may not be able to act on it as fast. You may have more human in the loop steps that slow things down to get resolution. So those things are there, but at the same time, it's just not broadly deployed yet. So we have yet to see how the combination of more observed data points and reasoning capabilities from AI combine to give us better orchestration. But certainly that was a big part of what we talked about last week. And that's just one class of enterprise software. All classes that I'm aware of are actively adding AI right now. CRM, ERP, observability, various forms of automation, RPA, workload automation, and so forth.
Yes, and in some cases, the use case and the path to value is well understood. In observability, being able to identify, not only detect patterns based on what's already known, but being able to identify new patterns that can be tied to anomalies that might lead to service outages. That's definitely a place for AI technologies like machine learning to go in and be leveraged. I think on a larger scale, though, one of the key features for automation has always been with respect to how it integrates with other systems in the environment. In fact, the core capability of automation is to be able to go and bring those all together and execute a schedule to make the systems dance. I think that's an area that the value of AI tools is yet to be shown, aside from the fact that automation that we can now integrate into and orchestrate the AI tools and the data that needed. It's unclear what AI is going to bring to the table there to make those processes more reliable, to make them more efficient, to make them more transparent. I think getting there is going to take some time. And where the vendor releases this year are starting to touch into that, we're looking at a very, very early stage of what's going to be a multi-year journey.
Yeah, some are farther along than others, and there's a big difference too between what areas we're in. Like some folks building for their own use. Walmart has created an environment for AI called Element that is supposed to be quite powerful for them to then from there create all of the agents they need. But here we're talking about things they're doing, right on the edge of their shopping app, of their inventory systems in the store, and so forth. They have the scale to do it, and they have use cases that are often addressed with more custom software at that scale. Whereas internally in their IT operations and other areas, while they may have those capabilities, they're probably just as likely to be leveraging that which the software vendors themselves are building in, but they will have better data and better ideas about how to augment those tools for their purposes. So I think if you're talking about software vendors versus enterprises with doing their own work, certainly, Tom, as you pointed out earlier, the enterprise software vendors can scale this across more customers. So for those kinds of tool sets, I really think you end up waiting and taking what your vendor can give you, because they'll make it work inside of their environment, and you'll just need to further tweak it I think the LLMs have some initial value, and they're great at summarizing things. They're great at a number of things, but to really be point specific, you've got to, like you said, Tom, you got to get specific use cases, and then you got to make sure that they're augmented, RAG augmentation or what have you, with the right data to keep them on topic, and then have the right controls around it to understand, when maybe they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what the software vendors can do inside of their environments, maybe better than individual enterprises can do for those same functions.
Which brings me to the core of my pragmatism or skepticism, which is with what we are seeing today, individually working with LLMs, our confidence levels that we could ask an LLM to, summarize how the June month-end processes went and have that sent off to the chief operations officer without our review. I wouldn't do it. And I don't think there are many people who are that optimistic that they can rely on the LLM to go and do that. Will we get there? Yes. And it's probably going to take a few automation teams to function as early adopters and to partner with vendors to take them from the initial implementation of summarization into something that everyone can have confidence in.
Yeah, we were talking about adoption curves as we were planning this episode, and I think the idea, take something like containerization. I mean, containers were talked about for a long time. 10, 12 years, we saw the rise of containers, and that matured similarly, where I would say there was a phase of Me Too product management and marketing hype. If you were building a new app, you might very well take advantage of that, but when are you going to take the time to go rebuild older apps only to make them containerized? If they have to be modernized for other reasons, that's probably going to be part of the process. But, it certainly didn't happen overnight. And in the automation space, if I look just at the stuff directed by workload automation software, it's about 30% containerized right now in terms of the jobs they're directing. They don't necessarily see 100% of everything. So, let's err on the side that, we might be at about 50% of the IT infrastructure containerized at this point, somewhere between 40 and 50%. I highly doubt it's more than that over the whole market. And we've been at this 15 years. I mean, we're just crossing that 50% mark.
Yeah. And there's a long tail there. And, getting from 50% to 75% may not even be feasible. It may be that the other 50% are applications that are better off left running as is, that there's no business benefit to going and rehosting them in containers.
Containers in the very early going, well, the technology itself worked fine. You did not have the management environment, the monitoring, the controls around it. So it was run somewhat suboptimally, still within environments, say like VMware, for a long time until the rest of the tool set grew up around it. Really, we saw the same thing as virtualization hit the market in 2000, 2001. Everyone was talking about virtualization, but it languished to super take off because there just wasn't the infrastructure of management tools. Then VMware and others grew up around that. And then they ended up being the crutch for virtualization in the early going till the tools grew up around the containerization as well. And AI will follow a similar path. It will get better. These are the very early days still, especially with the LLMs and the agents. We may not even yet know all of the weak points we still have to solve. But if you jump forward 5 or 6 years, I'm fairly confident they are going to be solved.
Yes. What I would say in summarizing, we're both in agreement that they have great potential if used properly. They're certainly complementary to existing processes, but that adoption is not going to come in a few months or by year end. Adoption itself by automation teams is going to be spread out over a few years, and taking the value out of adoption, seeing a return on investment will be longer still as people figure out what are the best practices that they can apply within their own organization, within their own portfolio, in order to get the most out of the new technology.
It is an exciting time, though, isn't it, to be doing what we do. It's fun to see it evolving, but you do have to put your hype sunglasses on a bit.
Yes, and even then you might be squinting.
Like looking at a solar eclipse of technology, right?
I think that's probably where we'll close on all of this. Remembering that the excitement and investment in AI right now means that the products in the space are evolving really, really rapidly. And Dan and I might even have a different perspective on where this is going to be in 6 months, although the enterprise adoption path will probably not change.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a one and done topic here. This will continue to be something we discuss. We do have 2 or 3 other episodes sort of thought about on AI that we'll do, probably intermixing with some other things over the next couple of months. But this is scratching the surface of a topic we will spend a lot more time on.
Yes. And if you, the listener, has feedback or questions about what we discussed today or any of the past episodes, you can reach out to us via our email at eaepodcast@emausa.com, or Dan and I are both on LinkedIn. The homepage for the podcast is em360tech.com, and the podcast itself is syndicated through Apple, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeart, Deezer, YouTube, and Spotify.
Thank you, Dan and Tom, for your insights on today's topic, and thanks to our listeners for joining the Enterprise Automation Excellence podcast. If you're a technology or operations leader looking to enhance your automation strategy, stay connected for more expert insights. Visit enterprisemanagement.com to learn how EMA can support your automation initiatives, and check out more episodes for in-depth discussions and industry trends.